the persistence of Sukhdev and our family, we were able to force the police to search the location where Ricky went missing in Kingston, and despite pleas on a daily basis that they should take the incident of racial violence that Ricky experienced, the family were left on their own, absolutely on their own, to conduct searches in Kingston Town Centre. And this didn't just include asking people where Ricky had been with his friends, but actually collating evidence. The police kept saying to the family that they seen and viewed the CCTV camera. And when we went to the shops where they said they had done that, the shopkeepers, including Bentel's superstore, said that the police had never been there. And it's actually the family, and Sukhdev in particular, who found the last image of Ricky on that fateful night. And we don't know when. We know the incident happened on the 14th of October, but we don't know exactly when he ended up in the river, only yards away from the incident where he and his friend were there. It's really the first occasion, a unique testimony by a family justice campaigner to write a book in this way. I mean, I was involved in the Stephen Lawrence case. The book written by Doreen Lawrence came much after the campaign when she became a baroness. It's not about the campaign, it's about the issues. So, from 1979, when I've been involved in Southall, the killing of Lay Peach, actually in April 23rd, 1999, even his widow who campaigned for about 40 years didn't write a book, or couldn't write a book, wasn't able because of the trauma to write a book. So Sukhdev has started a trend, a unique trend of a family campaigner, a woman in particular, a mother, who has not just shown and exposed what the police and the state has done to her, but used this book to tell her story and the story of many people like her. And we would launch this book with her speaking and other people speaking. And before we start, although this book has been written, it's not the final chapter of the campaign. The campaign is still alive. We still want justice, and we still want to force the police to carry out a proper, thorough investigation through an independent means. And so I think it's fitting if you start this meeting by remembering Ricky, and I'd like you to stand up and do a minute's silence in Ricky's memory.
I'll stand. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
So my name is Tandy Chala, and I'm a trade unionist in the GMB Union and a community activist. And first of all, I just want to give solidarity from the trade union movement to Sukhdev and her family for the campaign for the last 25 years. And I got a call on Sunday because I went to the book launch on Sunday when it was first launched. And Sukhdev called me and I thought, oh, got a phone call. So I thought, oh my God, I hope nothing's wrong. And she asked me to invite me to speak today, and I thought, wow, what an honour. I followed the Ricky Real campaign as a bystander, just watching, going to places, going to meetings as and when I could. So much was going on at that time. We had the Stephen Lawrence, we had Roy the Ghoul, we had so much stuff going on, some racism that we had to face in the community. So it's so important that we are all here today, we're united. And I think Sukhdev is, I've also met Sukhdev when she was working in Hounslow. We had a one-stop shop for domestic abuse, and in that was the housing, homeless section, and I remember seeing her there, and she continued working as well as campaigning. And that's such a testament to Sukhdev and her family and how she's continued to break those barriers, to ask those questions, to challenge the establishment to get where she is today. And it's so important that we are united and back her and her family in carrying on that campaign. And it's really important to note that racism played a real big part in this case. Right from the beginning, Ricky's case started with racism, with racist abuse. It really needs to be remembered. It involved a racist attack, and with police officers who displayed racist views, opinions and assumptions. And I've read this book 3 times since Sunday, and every time I've read it I've cried. Every single page has got tears on here. Anger, all your feelings that you have, anger, hurt, pain is all in this book, and you can actually hear and feel Sukhdev and her family's pain and the journey that she's had. And Ricky's case remains open, and that means we have the power to continue that. We have the power to ask, to continue and demand a new investigation. I was thinking, I was reading, and I think if this was a white family, a middle-class white family, Sukhdev mentions that in the book, the results would have been imminent. And there's 2 things that Sukhdev has done in this campaign. One is she's changed the policy on missing persons, and secondly is family liaison officers. The procedure of that has been changed. Now none of us know that. If Sukhdev was a white woman, it would be all over the paper. Oh no, this is, missing persons, it's been changed. None of us know this. Because we are black and brown people, anything that we do doesn't get any media attention, doesn't get anything. That's why it's important as a community we all come together. And I'm from the trade union movement, and we challenge and we hold to account, especially when it comes to issues of discrimination and racism. And it's 25 years since Ricky was murdered by racists, and the police failed to take action as quickly as they should had he been a white boy. We wouldn't be in this position. And the TC Black Workers Conference, and I recall that Sukhdev attended that conference. Black trade unions from all over different organisations, different unions. And there's a French meeting, the motions were passed, and there is a mention in the book, Sukhdev mentions how the trade union movement supported and helped fund the campaigns. And the role of unions in partnership with community organisations in challenging racism is so important. And it's the only way that racism will be defeated in the long term. So it's important that the changes that Sukhdev has made are spoken about, and we continue to hold their family and Sukhdev in her battle to continue. And there's a petition going around, which I'm sure people will talk about. Please spread the word, sign the petition. The more people we get to sign the petition, we'll get this open inquiry opened up again. And just to say that, on a personal level, every time I read this book, I'm going to read it again. It's a journey that we all are familiar with when it comes to racism. As black people, and I use the term black in a political sense, because black unifies us all against the races. And it's important to remember that. That's all I'm going to say, because I know Jonathan arrived, and I just want to thank Sukhdev from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to come and speak. It's such an honour as well, so thank you, Sukhdev.
I made the mistake of thinking I could drive through Southall. Sorry about that. If I go back over the history of this, actually Suresh and I met before, because when we were set up the Hayes Law Centre and all the rest, if you remember way back. I remember the history of all this. I get the contact from Suresh. I go down and meet the family. Immediately I'm talking to the commander at Hillingdon. There's a complete breakdown of communication as far as I can see between the police commander at Hillingdon and then down in the other forces of Richmond. Kingston. No effective search was going on, so the family have to do that themselves. And this is just a litany after litany of error and mistake. And the responses they weren't just in terms of not paying sufficient attention to the worries that we had. They were downright insulting at times, to be frank. And what we tried to do is get across to the police that Ricky would never ever stay out like this without contacting his mum. And we're trying to say to them, look, this is so out of character, there is something wrong here. And then, I don't know what's been said so far, they've come up with, well, maybe he's staying out with a girlfriend, or maybe it's a boy, and all this sort of thing. Every sort of prejudicial response that was coming back. All the time, there was a building sense of urgency, to be honest, an element of panic, because you knew there was something wrong here, you knew Ricky wouldn't go missing in that way, you knew he would be in touch, but he hasn't been, so there must be something serious wrong here. And somehow we couldn't get that across. And it was almost as though we were inventing the worry, if you like. And I was trying to get across to them, I know this family, I've met them before, they wouldn't be saying these things if they weren't worried, they wouldn't be raising these issues with you if it wasn't serious. And from that instant on, all we were asking for was sufficient police resources to seek Ricky, secure his safety, and then if we couldn't, at least find out what happened. It just went on like that continuously. Eventually, exactly where the family thought Ricky would be, they found his body. It was just unbelievably, I don't know, it was like something being played out, error after error, neglect after neglect. And you just really, it was hard to come to terms with at the time. And you would not expect it to happen. You just wouldn't expect it to happen. Then after that, there was just the same sort of thing, lack of police resources, failure really to accept that this could be related to any form of racial incident, and again, a combination of almost arrogance in the way that they treated the concerns of the family. We did eventually get an investigation into the investigation, and I thought, well, at least because we were meeting the authority itself, we met them in the House of Commons, etc., and went through what we wanted. That investigation then took place, and then they wouldn't give us the report. They wouldn't give us the report of the investigation, knowing what our concerns were. So then what happened was we got some leak of that report, and I was forced to use privilege at House of Commons to read it out, because otherwise we could have been prosecuted. And in fact, at one stage we were worried that Suresh was going to be prosecuted because they were targeting him. And we thought at one point in the middle of the coroner's inquiry, Suresh was going to be arrested. And it got to that level. And all we were seeking is the truth, the cooperation, adequate resources provided for the investigation, communication with us on a regular basis to know what's going on, and then us feeding in the information that was coming to us. All we wanted to do was work with the police to find out the truth, and it never happened throughout. And to be frank, I was building anger all the time because we were so frustrated. Then we go through the coroner's inquiry, and again what the police do is there's a lack of cooperation, they're threatening Suresh and others. We come out of that. We continue the campaign on, and I was on all the pickets, all the demonstrations, etc. And we thought, something will crack. Usually in these investigations, the first 48 hours are the most important. We've lost that, but we thought at least if we keep campaigning, something will come forward. We'll be able to determine the truth of what happened. And then a couple of years ago, because we were always campaigning then to make sure that we got access to the information the police had. Then a couple of years ago, we meeting with us, so we meet in our office, and they come and tell us that as part of the concerns the police were investigating with regard to, the spy cops effectively, they come and tell us at the very time we were appealing for more police to be on the investigation, we did have police with us. They were in the campaign, but they were undercover and they were surveilling us.
Bloody bastards!
Well, what was interesting is that they said to us, this was collateral intrusion. I've never heard of that before. So in other words, we weren't surveilling you, Mrs. Reel, we were surveilling other elements in the campaign. It was bizarre. Well, we knew already that this was really being harassed anyway. So we're now wrapped up in that whole spike ops inquiry. And that deep irony, when we were desperate for police resources, when we wanted a proper investigation, they were spending resources and money on surveilling us. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The situation as we now see it is that we've got to continue on to make sure, first of all, Ricky's name is not forgotten. It's not forgotten what happened to him, because eventually out there we will secure the truth. And the more we raise this case, the more opportunity there is to find that truth. What I just can't admire Sukhdev enough for this, to go through the trauma all over again of the loss, the 20 years of absolute campaigning and the frustration and the upset, the harm, the way it's affected the whole family, then to come through that and then to devote yourself to writing the book, I think is an act of absolute heroism, to be honest, and I can't thank Sukhdev enough for that, because what the book will now do, it will enable us to advertise the case more, and eventually that will stimulate more information coming forward. Because just let me say this finally, we are not giving up until we get the truth, and with the truth we get justice. Simple as that.
And that's the tragedy, and that's why it's important this book comes out. The first case is Blakey, killed in Southall, and the second is Stephen Ward. Not because the other cases are not important, but they are national or even international recognized campaigns. So, split that. 14th of October 1997 to the 21st of October 1998. Vicky goes missing. The family started in the police. He's with his 3 friends. And the friends, even before I get involved and John gets involved, tell Sukhdev and the family exactly what they've experienced. That they'd been out at night, they were accosted, racial abuse was shouted, there was a punch-up, and the split. That's what I was told when I met Sukhdev. I didn't create it, I didn't invent it. That's what Sukhdev told me. And actually, we weren't thinking he is not alive. I didn't think that. We and the family wanted to find him. We thought he'd gone missing. He was injured, possibly in hospital. And so, when the family said on the 15th we would search for him, we went every night, from 7 in the evening till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at night at Kingston Town Centre, every single day. Family members, campaign members, etc. We didn't just talk to the bus drivers, we talked to the shopkeepers, we cut posters, we spoke to any person who would speak to us. We went to palliative bins and searched for him. We seized any opportunity to get any evidence we could have what had happened. CCTV cameras, any form of evidence that we would get. We interviewed his friends and we tried to get their support, etc. It became clearer that it was, remember this is 97, this is pre-Lawrence. Okay? And for any Asian or black person or working class person to force the police to do investigation is virtually impossible. You'd be seen as a troublemaker, the stereotype. So the only way to do that is to get a member of parliament. Who better than the family and the member of parliament working in conjunction to pressure on the police? Normally, they listen to the member of parliament. They start doing things a bit more thoroughly and a bit more carefully and become a bit more open, or at least become, their investigation improves, they create resources. In this case, the first week was not even about death, because we didn't think they died. It was about finding him. That's what it was about. He was missing. And the police said we have a policy that we can't look for him, because he's over 18. In any case, as John said, he may have a girlfriend, he may have a real marriage here. All the negative stereotypes that they would on an Asian family, thinking that the son is unhappy in the child, when actually what the family are concerned about is welfare and his health. They ignored us. And we started creating a diagram of what the possibilities were, where he would end up. And it was obvious that if he'd attacked, there was only a couple of routes he would take from police and town centre. And one of the possibility was that he'd probably chase to River Thames, which is about quarter of a mile, 400 yards from the location of the incident where he was attacked, and dark. If he's chased, he may have fallen down the hill. So that's why we thought he was there at a particular point. You know, John is right. When they finally conceded on the 6th day, we got a helicopter looking at the river, and they would send the police frogmen to search. It took them 7 minutes to find his body. Not 17, not 2 days, 7 minutes. And you know, there were times when we went past the spot, and I don't know, you know, he's not my brother, I see him as my brother. I saw Sukhdev and the kids and the father. I wanted to dive in and actually get him out. I didn't know he was there. It was just a feeling that you have that he was there. 7 minutes. Next day, the police officer arrives, Moffat. Sukhdev's book doesn't mention the real names of police officers for libel species. Moffat comes, we're outside the house, at the bridge, comes, I don't know him, greets me as my name, goes into the family, and within 3 seconds, in 3 minutes, he says, I know what happened. Vicky went to the river, tried to urinate, and fell because he was drunk, and that's it. That's it. That's his theory. There's no conclusive evidence of any of that. It's just a hypothesis which is not based on any rationality. It's a possibility. You can't discount it, but you can't have that as the only option. And he gives up. He absolutely gives up. He doesn't do anything. He becomes very hostile. So hostile that when he leaves the police force, he actually takes part of Ricky's file to his home and takes the photographs of the post-mortem to his home. And you know, we had to do our own post-mortem. The state did his post-mortem. We did an independent, the family did an independent post-mortem, which showed some kind of differences on what the police were thinking and what the actual circumstances were. For example, we thought there were some injuries on him which couldn't have been caused by just falling into the river. How he fell into the river, the coldness of the river stream, all that stuff. Why we were worried were, when somebody dies in a river death, forensically you have to collect the evidence quickly, because it's not a static scene, it's a moving scene. It's not a park or a street which you can preserve. So if somebody's gone into the river, the police have to actually secure that area as quickly as possible, even if they don't think that's where he's fallen, because that's what their policy states. But they didn't do any of that. So a lot of the evidence that should have been retained, collated or preserved, was never preserved. So the first week in any death case, according to the Home Office, the first 4 days are pivotal in collating that evidence. In this case, this is a river death. Even after 7 days, there's no evidence collated. There's a pissing around and telling the family that you are a problem, rather than seeking a way to investigate the problem. Then you have a second phase, which is an investigation, a police complaint, and then the inquest. The police complaint authorities are unreliable, actually. I mean, that's one of the pivotal things, the Lawrence case, that we had to change the whole format of legislation for making the police complaint process even more independent. The police complaint does criticize the police very strongly, but it doesn't move us into getting a new investigation, which is a point. So where do you go? You go into an inquest. An inquest is a process where the coroner looks at the evidence and decides whether this is an unlawful killing, is a suicide or an accident, or a misadventure, or whatever. There are a number of options. This coroner we had come across much earlier. He's the same coroner, Dr. John Burton, who is a great teacher. And unfortunately, we had run-ins with him during the Blair Beach case. Blair Beach was a school teacher killed by the Special Patrol Group on 23rd of April 1979.
Special Patrol?
And then when the coroner looks at the case, you know what he does? He does two things which are exceptional. First, he decides there should be no jury to look at it. He will decide. So the Blair Peach's family have to go to the High Court and get a jury. It's known as a Peach inquest. Second thing he decides is that Blair was hit on the head, but he died because he had a thin cranium. This is true. He actually blamed Blair for having a thin skull, not the force of the weight that the police inflicted with a heavy blow. I don't know whether people remember this, but when the special group lockers were raided, they found truncheons with lead course filled in them in the Blair Beach case. The third thing he does, he says, look, what is your evidence that the police really inflicted the blow? It's possible and hypothetical that Blair was killed by a left-wing activist to make him into a martyr. This is a coroner actually posing that as an alternative. I know it sounds ridiculous. Look at it. Because some of the things when I say I think it's impossible, but that's what John Burton did. In Ricky Reale's case, he stopped her brother going into the court.
Say what?
All sorts of excuses. We had intimidated some witnesses, or that he should have been giving evidence. We didn't know. He stopped me going into the court, and just before the inquest, after the inquest verdict was announced as an open verdict, he said to Michael Mansfield that Mr. Grover needs to be arrested. I was, why do I need to be arrested? I haven't done anything. He stopped me even going into the court, and we had tremendous support in the inquest area. We had gallery full for ages, and people from different musical groups, Asian Dub Foundation was there, and all that kind of stuff. Everybody was there. It was in 19 whatever, being the last of it. And he wanted to disarm the family county. So you criminalize people around you. And you create all this stuff. And there are written reports of so-called allegations against me, which I don't know what they're about, where I should be arrested. So I have to get a barrister to stand up and say, you can't arrest him. He said, well, you don't, I mean, it was a bizarre situation. But that's, luckily, the jury did not look at what the police were saying and they returned an open verdict. You should have got unlawful killing, but because of the loss of evidence, because of the failings and stuff, you never got it. Then you come to this bizarre stuff, post-inquest, where the family are still pursuing, John is asked questions in Parliament, all sorts of things are happening. And, I've met many family campaign members, but I've never met a family campaign member who actually quotes other families and supports them. So Sukhdev and I, for example, were at the Lawrence inquiry throughout the whole process. She was with me on the first day of the inquiry until the last day. She became a friend of Neville Lawrence, Stephen's father. It's not unique that they treat this family in this way. In the Lawrence case, let me just remind you actually what the evidence was, and I very quickly do that. I don't know whether you remember that, but in Stephen's case, you had him stabbed by 5 guys at Valley on 22nd of April, 1993. And before they stabbed him, they said, what N-word, stabbed him. He's with Wayne Brooks and they run, and Stephen collapses. The family are told by friends, not by the police. Because then the family started looking for babies and found him in hospital. And by the time they had went to the hospital on the 23rd of April, he died. The police had said that there was no evidence. So we managed, through different contacts, to get Nelson Mandela to meet the family in May 1993. And they met him in a hotel in Piccadilly. And when the family met him, they didn't ask him, but Mr. Mandela said, do you want me to make a statement? I'm willing to make a statement. He offered. And he comes out of Piccadilly Hotel and says, horrendous case, this shows that black lives are as cheap in this country as in South Africa. Can you imagine a world statesman saying that? which shifts the whole campaign, becomes much more. What do? Mr. Mandela says that they arrest the suspects. They never cross-examine them properly. They don't give any statement. Mr. Mandela flies out 7 days later. What happens? They de-arrest him. And no charges are given. And in October 1993, the Crown Prosecution Service decides no evidence. So we take a private prosecution in 1994 on his anniversary. And we lose the case because the police say that his key witness, Dwayne Brooks, identified one of the suspects, not because he knew him or genuinely saw him, but somebody had told him the identity of the person. So it's contaminated. And Officer Cole says that, and the case is lost. At the inquiry, we get a bundle which shows that Officer X Coles is actually a close friend of David Norris, is a suspect's father, and he's got a brown envelope given to him for money. Right? This is at the inquiry, I'm not making this up. So there's lots of evidence that comes up. For example, they are told that in Clifford Norris's home, the knife is hidden under the floorboards. The police do a search, but they find nothing. So Mr. Mansfield, the same barrister that worked for Sukhdev, asked the police officer, 30 years of experience, saying, did you go and search the house? Yes. Did you know that the knife was under the floorboards? Yes. Did you lift the floorboards? No. Why not? And this is his answer. The house was so clean and immaculate, they didn't want to lift it. Did you say that in Southall? Did you say that in Brixton? Did you say that in Ireland? The house is so clean and immaculate, they won't find the murder. This is a fact. I'm not making it up. Look at the inquiry stuff. They do a surveillance on the suspects on the weekend. The bags have been taken by the Acott brothers. The bags have been weapons and their clothing. They have a surveillance officer outside. The surveillance officer comes to the inquiry and is asked the question, did you do the surveillance? Yes. Did you see the Acott brothers come out? Yes. Did you photograph them? No. Why not? I didn't have a camera. Did you ring anybody? No. I didn't have a mobile. Did you follow them? No, I didn't have any vehicle. This is at the moment. Why do you think McPherson, a high-class clan member, judge from the Highlands, who has never lived with black people or brown people, would find the police to be instituted racist after the inquiry? Because the evidence was so damning. The failings, the litany of failures that John speaks about in this case are exactly the same with Lawrence. And this case is taking place whilst the Lawrence stuff is taking place. So the police had no excuse to say that you can't take it seriously. In 1997, when Ricky went missing, there was a change in legislation on racial harassment. For the first time, racial harassment became open. There were demonstrations taking place in Welling because the left trade unionists, anti-racist activists were trying to stop the BNP bunker headquarters in Welling, which had created all sorts of murders. Stephen was the fourth killing, racist killing in Eltham in 1993. Gurdeep Bengal had been killed. Rohit Dougal had been killed. Roland Evans had been killed. 4 people had been none of the racist murder capital in Italy. The chair of the Commission for Racial Equality, Sir Herman Houslet, wrote to the police in Greenwich on the weekend of the murder and said, our eyes are on you. Still failed. It still failed. The Lawrence were lucky to get Mandela. But their tenacity is no greater than Sukhdev's. Their commitment of the team is no greater than Sukhdev and Balwant. Their determination to get the results is no greater, no less than Sukhdev's or John's or Balwant's or ours.
My book. Yeah? I want him to read it and I want a written response from him. Why this course is possible.
Can I explain what happened last time we went to Scotland Yard? Last time, just very briefly, last time we went to Scotland Yard, it was to see the files. So we went there, they gave us each a few sheets of paper each, which were heavily redacted, so one word here and there. And we fell about laughing, and then we said, can we take them away? They said no, because all your different speakers are different, and you might put them together to make sense of it. Sorry, Sukhdev.
Thursday, the monitoring group, Bookmarks and John for inviting me to launch my first book, named Ricky Rio, Silence is Not an Option.
Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Sorry?
She said you can speak louder, please, auntie.
Speak loud. I'm sorry. I can come in the middle. If you
Yeah.
I'll come in the middle.
Better. Yes, that's better.
So we switched off the fan as well.
Switch,
so-
yeah.
A few people at my first launch, which was last week in Queen Mary University, together with journalists, asked me why I chose such a powerful title for my book. Ricky Rio, Silence is Not an Option, gives many messages. Justice for Ricky Rio campaign has been very active and vocal since 1997. We had no choice but to demonstrate, have public meetings or vigils to continually raise our voice. This was due to the poor investigation, attitude of the police force, including stereotyping of family. It clearly showed that they had formed their own opinions of Asian people, as mentioned in the book. We had two options open to us: either remain silent, sit at home and grieve forever, regret not trying to find out how and why Ricky died. The second option was to raise our voice and ask questions, demand answers, which is our right, everybody's right. The title of the book is saying that for us, silence is not an option. It never was. But it also gives encouragement to others that staying silent will not give you answers to any injustice you have suffered. Writing the book was important as I have seen and felt grief, pain, and emptiness, which we feel as Ricky's parents. This feeling is also shared by Ricky's siblings. It is now tragic to see that these feelings which we are going through are now impacting our grandchildren. This was witnessed by many who attended the launch last week in London. It was important to tell future generations about what happened to Ricky and how his case has affected us. I believe my race and color became a barrier which prevented in getting justice for Ricky. It was because we refused to go away, refused to be silent about how the police have let us down over and over again. From the time they failed us to investigate his disappearance, then his subsequent death, that recently we found out that undercover police officers from the Special Demonstration Squad were spying on us, and these are big people right at the top. And I have been given the name of one of the officers who also is connected to the Lawrence family. And I have been given some reports, the first family ever to have a meeting with the inquiry team, the first family ever to receive the reports. So we have made, there were barriers, but we keep on breaking them and just going over them. Even that was denied because we had to march the streets, look for my Ricky. The Justice for Ricky Rio campaign was born, not by choice, but out of desperation, because we realized early on, before even Ricky's body was found, that we were not going to get any justice through the police. Ricky died 25 years ago, and the campaign has been running for the same length of time. Imagine having to wait 25 years, a quarter of a century, for accountability from the authorities and the truth about your child's death, and still facing endless years to get answers. I cannot bring my son back, but I can lay open to others what we as a family have endured and continue to endure. So the lessons may be learned from our pain. I had been thinking of writing a book about my son's case for a long time, and that tomorrow becomes another tomorrow. But first, we needed to, all the obstacles or challenges that were thrown in our way meant we needed to deal with those first. Ill health also became an obstacle in this scheme where I almost died. What spurred me to write this now is more than one thing. One day I came across a book cover showing my photograph with Mike Mansfield QC. It was a book written by Laura Pendleton, who is a senior lecturer at the university. Her book was entitled Tackling Institutional Racism, and Ricky's case was also mentioned in that book. The cover photo on this book was once taken on the first day of Ricky's inquest. This led to more searches, only to discover that there are many other books, policies, theses, dissertations, and research which refer to Ricky's case. I was not aware of that. So they are using Ricky, and I was told that this book should be in each and every library, and it should be in each and every lawyer's office. So I found an inclination to write a book one day soon, but life was getting in a way as usual, and part of me was reluctant to confront and commit to paper the hell that we had been through. This last and what pushed me into actually putting paper to the pen or fingers onto a keyboard was a hilarious moment. My granddaughters, 7-year-old twins, came and sat next to me at my house with their little notebooks and recently sharpened pencils, and told me that as a school project they had to write about a famous person, and that famous person in their eyes was their Uncle Ricky. They started asking questions about Ricky, but what can you tell 7-year-olds? And mind you, they were very persistent, just like their mother, my daughter, Ricky's sister. All my grandchildren who have never met Ricky want to know about him and ask a lot of questions about him because he is still so much a part of our life as a family. My eldest grandchild has now decided to pursue a different path due to Ricky's death. After they left, I started my first chapter. I have never written a book before, didn't know how to write. But I have written quite a lot of poetry. Some of it's been printed as well, published as well, but never a book. And did not know what to say, but the fingers kept on typing and somehow it turned into a book. It was quite a traumatizing time for me. I have never forgotten this nightmare, but putting it on paper somehow made it more real, brought back more memories, more nightmares, and a few hospital admissions as well. I was sometimes shocked at myself when I remember what we had been forced to live through. My search then began to find a publisher. I did not want any fame or fortune, simply a story to be told which my supporters continued to ask for. Another friend, Mr. Bhavinder Rana, recommended Com. Is that the way I pronounce your name? So thank you, Mr. Rana. My huge thanks to Com, my publisher, my dear friend, as he remained calm throughout the entire process, even when I sent him several emails, messages a day. He responded promptly to all my messages, which reduced my stress, but doubled his. How he dealt with or make any sense at all is a mystery to me. John, Mike, Suresh won't know what I'm like with emails. These are the people always protecting me, supporting me, and standing with me for years. This book is Ricky's legacy, written with support from Bhalwan, my husband, who made sure I was looking after myself, giving me food, cups of tea to ensure I had regular breaks. My children by supporting me, especially every time I had problems with my computer. Either I lost my work or I did not remember where I saved it. And my grandchildren prompting me to carry on by asking endless questions about their Uncle Ricky. People, including myself, often talk about loss of a child and how it affects them, but not many people talk about loss of a sibling. My children have also written a piece about Ricky's death and how it has changed them. His death and the investigation, or rather lack of investigation, has changed our family forever. We all get better at perfecting "I am okay" mask which we show to the world. My children, their partners, my grandchildren, my husband, Ricky's father, our extended family, supporters and friends have been a rock, and without them I'm not sure I would have survived Ricky's death. There is a petition on Change.org about Ricky's case which is asking for a fresh investigation, not a paper exercise like before, but a proper fresh investigation. Please sign and share it. We all need to do what we can to ensure full fresh investigation takes place and not just a paper exercise. We want all of you to write to your MPs asking for fresh investigation, and please do copy the London Mayor and also my friend John McDonnell. There is a standard leaflet for this which is on my Facebook under Sukhdev Rio, and everybody is welcome to join my Facebook, and I try and update it regularly. There is a website named Justice for Ricky Rio which sadly is not up to date, and I don't have the skills to do this. Maybe I will find someone to update it soon. Asian Dove Foundation, Dr. Daz, formed the first song for Ricky, and there is a CD with loads of songs. The first song for Ricky. Thank you. My first contact with Taranjeet was a Zoom meeting to discuss ways forward via trade unions. She's a great friend, very helpful, with a head full of ideas. She also became my voice at meetings when I was ill. So thank you, Taranjeet. Maybe there's somebody who could write a song in Punjabi before me and make a song. So that's a future project. I went to the radio station to do an interview, and that's what I was asked. It said my book, not many Asian elder people can read it. Can that be translated? So I said, well, I'll think about it in 20 years' time if I'm still alive. And also a song for someone to please write and perform a song in Punjabi. Thank you. And that's my friend sitting there. Maybe think about it. I hope you all buy and read my book. It gives a lot of messages and spoke to people who feel alone and neglected by the institutions. I lived with Ricky for 20 years, locked him in my heart for 25 years, and now I share my Ricky with you all. I put my heart, soul, weakness, and strength in my book. This is to show people that we all go through these emotions at some stage in our lives, and we should not be ashamed to show our emotions. Please do write book reviews so that we can see what you think of it. Please keep on supporting us as we need to know who killed my son and why. We all need peace, and that will only come once we have justice for Ricky. Thank you.